Good morning and welcome to the Law Show. We're here every Sunday morning, 9:30 to 10:30, responding to text messages we've received either on the air while we're on the air or during the week. We try to respond immediately. So if you send us a text message anytime during the show, we try to respond to you quickly. Sometimes we use the text messages to introduce a subject or to talk at greater length about the issue that's raised by the person who sends us the message. So I'm going to start with one of the messages we received, but before I actually do that, one writer responding to the comment about the lawyer's appearance and their hair and eyebrows and whatever the things that the lawyer has little control over, said it really depends on what's between the ears, not what's on top of the head. And I thought, well, I appreciate that. But then later I thought, well, maybe that wasn't a compliment at all. So I just had to rethink that. And I don't think people really appreciate the difficulty a person has that every day they wake up, they have a bad hair day. But really, that's not the best criteria to pick a lawyer for anyway. But why that subject came up, we did get a number of responses to that. But there was a question that I really thought was an excellent question. And we're not seeing so much of this being advertised now, but we just had an avalanche of it before, and I'll tell you what this is all about. The question was, will I lose my insurance if I don't see a doctor for 14 days or go to the hospital? This all started because there were people advertising and saying just that. If you don't see a doctor in 14 days, you will lose your insurance. Well, this is nearly idiotic because you didn't have to have an injury. The comment was you need to go, or the advertisement was you need to go to a healthcare provider, was primarily a chiropractor, to be checked out so that you don't lose your insurance. But can you imagine someone going to the emergency room and saying to the emergency room staff with people in there that are very, very sick, accident victims and others, and saying, I'm here to be checked out because I don't want to lose my insurance. Well, sir, are you sick or are you injured? No, I actually am feeling fine. But I was told that if I don't come in here and have you check me out, that I'll lose my insurance. Well, of course, that was insane. Okay, another way to say it. But what were they talking about? What was the pitch that they were aiming at with this advertisement that said you're going to lose your insurance if you didn't get to see them within 14 days? There is a kind of insurance that everybody is required to have. It's archaic and almost useless, but everybody in Florida is required to have it and has been for the last 30 years. It's called PIP, Personal Injury Protection. And it is in the amount of $10,000. That's the maximum PIP that you can have. And you're required to have it. Well, what is PIP? PIP pays for lost wages or health care regardless of who's at fault in an accident. All right? Now, $10,000 hardly gets you a Band-Aid in the typical emergency room bill. So the $10,000 is only really beneficial to people who've lost wages and are not going to get their wages covered quickly so they can receive that money. That's really the only benefit of PIP because $10,000 is nothing in today's medical care costs. It just is insignificant. That's what they're saying you would lose if you didn't see a healthcare provider within 14 days. That's PIP. It's not all your insurance. It's not your med pay. It's not your uninsured motorist coverage. It's not anything other than the PIP. You would lose the PIP if you didn't see a doctor within 14 days. Well, if you're not injured and you have no symptoms from being in an accident, why are you bothering to go to a healthcare provider? Well, it's they say, to protect this PIP. You want to be sure and get this PIP. Well, here are the numbers, okay? And I'll tell you how the legislature addressed this. But if you had 100 people that were in an accident but were not injured, that's the vast majority of accidents, by the way. People are not injured. They might get a bruise or something, but they're not badly injured. That's most of the accidents. But let's just say that you had an accident and you were one of many who went to the healthcare provider and said, check me out, and I have this $10,000 available, and I'm here within 14 days. Well, if you have 100 people that basically are fine, nothing wrong with them, but they go and get, quote, checked out with the x-rays and examination fees and all of that, and there's a $10,000 pot of money there that the healthcare provider gets, and you did 100 of those, that would gross $1 million. So that's why we had all these advertisements saying, oh, terribly, the sky's falling in if you don't see us within 14 days. Well, the legislature recognized the gross abuse of that and limited certain healthcare providers to $2,500. That's the maximum they could charge. So you don't see these ads like you saw before. There are still some of them out there. And what the ads should say, if they were truthful, is that you will lose your personal injury protection, $10,000, if you don't see a healthcare provider in 14 days. But if you're not hurt or you're not injured, why are you bothering healthcare providers by going to them to be, quote, checked out? By the way, we had somebody that we knew was a friend of our family's, and she came to us and said she'd been to this certain healthcare provider, and they did a whole series of x-rays, as if that was some diagnostic benefit. Well, it's a detriment to you to be exposed to x-rays. If you don't have to have an x-ray, why in the world would you do that? But she thought it meant that was a very thorough examination. But she was fine. She had low back pain. All right. My brother, who was with us for many years before his death, was the ultimate observer of phony medical claims and cautioned us repeatedly in our cases to be sure that the case was meritorious and that the person was generally hurt, and to verify that before you went on. But he would tell me that with many ligament injuries, it takes about 6 weeks because of the poor blood supply to that area of the body, whatever it might have been, before you get well. So when people race to a doctor with a sore, whatever it is, knee or elbow or arm or whatever, and they get, quote, treatments, whatever they might be, massages or whatever it is, not really real medical treatments, but provided in these little offices around. So they get better and they think, well, that's why I got better, because I went and got these treatments or whatever. The truth is, they were going to get better on their own. So what is PIP? PIP is part of your insurance that you're required to have. Florida is really, really bad about this. In Florida, the policy of our legislature is they want to protect property first. That's number one. Whether you get injured or not, that's secondary to them. They want to protect property claims, okay? So in Florida, you're required to have property damage insurance, right? But you're not required to have liability insurance. So if you hit somebody and cause damage to them and harm them, your insurance will pay for their property to be repaired, but not for their injury that they've sustained. You personally are exposed to that. Mike McLeod covered this at length, but Florida is one of the only states in the country. All the states in the Southeast require bodily injury protection coverage. And the bodily injury protection coverage is in case you hurt somebody, that you have insurance that will protect them, not just their car or their property, but will protect them. Florida should adopt that, but there's a real pushback in Florida by the legislature protecting insurance companies and protecting the interest of property as opposed to the interest of people. And it has never gotten off the ground in Florida, although year in and year out they try to have bodily injury protection coverage required in Florida, which it should be by all accounts. It's required throughout the Southeast in virtually every state in the country. So that's the Florida story. And it is a function of the power and the influence of the insurance industry that is pervasive in Florida, has been and will be, and particularly when you have one party, which we have in Florida, that runs everything, then they just have to go to one central place and put the pressure on to make the recoveries that they or make the coverages that they want to provide, the law of the state. And that's what's happened in Florida. So what do you need? As I say, Mike McLeod covered this, I think, in a previous law show, but I was going to highlight it. Depending on your financial situation, you buy insurance to protect you in the event you cause a bad injury. And if you have substantial assets or wealth, then you want to protect them with as high a liability insurance limits as you can get. But there's another reason to get them. Say 100, 300 coverage or 300, 500 coverage. We'll explain more about that. But you want substantial coverage if you can afford it. For this reason, you can obtain the same level of insurance to protect you and your family as you buy to protect other people. So if you buy a $300,000 / 500,000, 300 per person, 500,000 for everybody that's injured in an accident, that's available if you have uninsured motorist coverage. That's available to you and your family in the event that a drunk who's uninsured rams into your car and causes you or your family a bad injury. You want uninsured motorist coverage. It is imperative that you get it. You can only get it to the extent of the bodily injury coverage you provide that protects other people. So if you buy $10,000 bodily injury coverage, you can only get $10,000 uninsured motorist coverage. Uninsured motorist coverage is critically important for people to get to protect their families. Look at your policy right now. We're going to close out here in just a second in this first segment, but I'll add this. You want it stacked. Don't ask me why right now. You want it stacked, which will double or triple depending on the number of cars. You have 2 cars, it's doubled. 3 cars, it's tripled. You want stacked uninsured motorist coverage. You want to get as much as you can, which means you've got to buy as much BI insurance as you can afford, bodily injury coverage. Bob Kerrigan for The Law Show. We're here every Sunday morning at 9:30. After this short break, we're going to be back. And when I come back, I'm going to talk about some very interesting medical issues that I think will be of importance to you. So stay tuned.